Welcome to Stock Talk.
Good to be here.
Today, we're diving straight into eBay's first quarter 2025 financial results.
Yep, hot off the press.
Our source is their official Q1 2025 earnings release, dated May 1st, 2025.
Right.
And our mission today, to really cut through the numbers and pull out the key insights, we want to give you a clear picture of eBay's performance right now and, what the future might hold.
Okay, sounds good. So the big headline, I think, is this is their fourth straight quarter of positive GMV growth, gross merchandise volume.
Right, fourth quarter. That's pretty significant.
It really is. It's not just a blip. It suggests maybe that some of their recent strategies are actually starting to gain some traction after, well, some slower periods.
Yeah, it definitely feels like a bit of momentum building.
Yeah.
So what was the actual GMV number?
$18.8 billion, which, like you said, is up 1% year over year as reported.
Okay, and if we strip out currency effects.
Then it's actually up 2%. So FX neutral growth is a bit stronger.
Got it. And revenue followed that trend too, right?
Yeah. Revenue hit $2.6 billion. That's also up 1% as reported, and 2% on an FX neutral basis.
So decent top line growth, but is it profitable growth? That's always a question.
Exactly. And looking at profitability, their GAAP operating margin came in at 23.8%.
Okay.
And the non-GAAP operating margin was even stronger, 29.8%.
Wow, nearly 30% non-GAAP. That's quite healthy.
It is. It suggests they're managing costs effectively, not just, chasing revenue blindly. That discipline is key for investors, I think.
Absolutely. And speaking of investors, they returned a fair bit of cash too.
They did. $759 million returned to stockholders. That was through share buybacks and dividends.
That's a substantial amount. What does that signal, do you think? Confidence.
Yeah, it signals confidence in their cash flow, definitely. And maybe they see their stock as a good value right now. It's always that balance, isn't it? Reinvesting versus rewarding shareholders.
Right. So let's maybe zoom in on those key Q1 financials. You mentioned the revenue and GMV. What about earnings per share?
Okay, yeah. GAAP EPS saw a big jump, up 25% year over year to $1.06.
25%. That's impressive.
It is. And non-GAAP EPS was also up 10% to $1.38. So solid earnings growth there.
So what's really driving that EPS jump, especially the GAAP figure being up so much more than revenue? Cost control.
It seems like a mix. Definitely some cost management involved, perhaps also a shift towards maybe higher margin parts of the business, like advertising.
That makes sense. And net income.
GAAP net income was $505 million, up 15% year over year.
Boy.
Non-GAAP net income was $657 million, which was actually only up about 1%.
Interesting difference between GAAP and non-GAAP net income growth there.
Yeah, the difference usually comes down to things like stock-based compensation, maybe some acquisition-related costs, things excluded from non-GAAP.
Right, so non-GAAP gives a clearer view of the underlying operations, maybe.
Often, yes, but you always need to understand what's being excluded, Both numbers tell part of the story.
Sure, and cash flow looks solid, too.
Very solid. Operating cash flow was $787 million, and free cash flow came in at $644 million.
That's strong cash generation.
Right.
It supports those buybacks and dividends we mentioned.
Exactly. It gives them flexibility for investments, too.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Beyond the core financials, what about their strategic initiatives? I know AI has been a big focus for them.
Yeah, definitely. They've rolled out that AI-powered listing tech, using AI to help sellers create listings faster.
Right. That's for C2C sellers in the US, UK, and Germany, I think.
That's right. The idea is to make it much easier and quicker to list items, which could, potentially boost inventory.
More listings, maybe better quality listings, too, if the AI helps with descriptions and detail.
Potentially, yeah. And then there's the partnership with OpenAI.
Ah, yes, the Operator AI agent. That sounded quite futuristic.
It's definitely interesting. An AI agent that can shop eBay autonomously for users could open up a whole new way for people to find things on eBay.
Yep, tapping into users who might not actively browse the site. That could be a differentiator.
For sure. And alongside AI, trust and safety remains a huge priority.
Always critical for a marketplace. What's new there?
Well, they expanded authenticity guarantee to watches and jewelry in Japan.
Japan, interesting market for luxury goods. Makes sense.
Exactly. Building trust where authenticity is paramount. And in the UK, they introduced enhanced buyer protection.
With a fee.
Yeah, buyer protection fee. But it includes things like 20% fees and customer support.
A fee is always a tricky balance. Will buyers pay for that extra security?
That's the bet. Maybe for higher value items, that peace of mind is worth a small fee. Could boost confidence, maybe even repeat business.
We'll see how that plays out. And they also made an acquisition, didn't they? Caramel?
Right, Caramel. That's focused on online automotive transactions.
Ah, tackling the trust and complexity in buying cars online.
Precisely. Caramel likely brings tech for secure payments, maybe inspections, things that make people more comfortable buying a car sight unseen.
Could make eBay a much bigger player in the used car market if they get it right.
Potentially. And staying with trust in specific categories, they expanded their partnership with PSA for grading trading cards.
Oh yeah, integrated with authenticity guarantee.
Yeah.
Like for the Pokemon campaign they did.
Exactly, the Evolving Shop campaign, tapping into those really passionate collector communities.
These niche categories seem important, even if they aren't the biggest volume drivers overall.
Yeah, they build engagement, attract specific demographics, it's smart. And then there's the Meta partnership.
Right. Putting eBay listings onto Facebook Marketplace in the US, Germany, and France. That's about getting more eyeballs, presumably.
Yeah, broader visibility for sellers. Success there would be measured by, traffic and sales coming from Facebook.
Any potential downsides to that kind of partnership? Less control, maybe?
Possibly. Less control over the user experience on Facebook's platform. Maybe complexities managing inventory across both. But the reach is tempting.
Okay. And another area that seems to be growing well is advertising.
Oh, definitely. Advertising revenue was $442 million in Q1.
Wow. What's that as a percentage of GMV?
About 2.4%. And the first-party ads, the ones eBay serves itself, were up 13% year-over-year to $418 million.
13% growth is strong. That's becoming a really significant revenue stream.
It really is. Driven by more sellers using their ad tools, probably paying a bit more for visibility too. As long as sellers see a return, it should be pretty sustainable.
Makes sense. Let's look at customer metrics quickly. Active buyers.
Up 1% year-over-year to 134 million.
Okay, modest growth. And regionally. How did the U.S. compare to international?
U.S. GMV was up 1%, similar to the overall growth. International GMV was flat, as reported.
But better FX neutral.
Yeah, modest growth on an FX neutral basis internationally, so a bit slower growth outside the U.S., maybe due to economic factors or competition.
Highlights the need for different strategies in different places.
Absolutely.
Anything else stand out from the quarter, like impact or recognition?
Well, eBay for Charity raised over $46 million in Q1, which is always good to see.
Yeah, that's impressive.
And they partnered with Condé Nast for a Vogue vintage market, raised $500,000 for wildfire relief. Plus, they were named to Fortune's most innovative companies list again.
Third year in a row, right?
Yeah.
Reinforces that innovation theme we talked about with AI.
Exactly.
Okay, so looking ahead, what's the guidance for Q2? Are they expecting this momentum to continue at the same pace?
The guidance seems a little more cautious, actually. For Q2 2025, they're forecasting revenue between $2.59 cents $2.66 billion.
Okay.
And GMV between $18.6 and $19.1 billion.
And what does that translate to in terms of year-over-year growth, FX neutral?
The FX neutral growth guidance for both revenue and GMV is basically between -1% and +2%.
So potentially flat to slightly down, or maybe slight growth. Definitely more cautious than the Q1 results.
Yeah, it likely reflects some ongoing economic uncertainty, maybe unpredictable consumer spending. It's probably prudent.
Fair enough. And EPS guidance.
Diluted GAAP EPS is forecast between 87 cents and $0.94. Non-GAAP between $1.24 and $1.31.
Okay, and they're continuing the dividend.
Yes, declared a $0.29 per share cash dividend for Q2. So continued returns to shareholders.
Right. So wrapping up, if we think about the risks and opportunities seem clear. AI, advertising, partnerships, focus categories, authentication. Maybe the Caramel acquisition pays off.
Yep. And the risks are kind of the usual suspects for e-commerce, aren't they? Shifting demand, tough competition, currency swings, changing consumer habits, making sure acquisitions integrate well.
Out of those opportunities, which one do you think holds the biggest potential key for eBay's future growth?
That's a tough one. But I think the AI integrations, if done right, could be truly transformative, enhancing listings, improving search, maybe that operator agent. It touches everything.
Yeah, AI feels like the biggest lever they have right now.
I think so. And those partnerships, like with Meta, give them reach they couldn't easily get otherwise.
Okay, so to kind of summarize for everyone listening, eBay's Q1, pretty solid. Beat expectations, showed that fourth quarter of GMV growth, good profits, strong ad revenue.
Right. And those strategic moves in AI and trust seem to be, making progress.
But the Q2 outlook is a bit more muted, suggesting Some caution is needed given the wider environment.
Exactly. It shows resilience, but they're navigating a complex landscape.
So here's something for you to think about. Given eBay's big bets on AI and these strategic partnerships, what do you believe will actually be the single biggest driver of their growth over the next, say, 2 or 3 years? And maybe what's an unexpected hurdle or disruptor they might face that isn't obvious right now?
Good questions to ponder. And of course, if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty, we definitely encourage you to check out the full earnings report. There's a lot more detail in there.